Thank you, Jessica, and welcome everyone. I want to say Happy New Year to you because it's still January, just barely, and I'm excited about 2021. I think we all have a feeling it'll be better than 2020 was, and for me it's a particularly good year because I expect to have two of my big projects finished this year. One of them is the clarinet book for Oxford University Press, which I'm working on diligently, and the other is my clarinet method. It'll be a complete teaching method for clarinet called Clarinet Adventures. And if you've followed me on the Clarinet magazine over the years, I've been writing articles for Clarinet magazine since 1998, and I've reached number 82. And most of those articles have some excerpts from the method that I've been compiling over the last few decades. But now I'm really reaching a point where some of it's getting finished. My method has a couple of important things that I consider to be important. One of them is the proper sequence of events in teaching. First of all, I'm a big proponent of the slurred approach to beginning the clarinet rather than the tongued approach. I like to have beginning students learn how to sustain their air and introduce the tongue as an interruption to the airstream rather than starting notes with the tongue right at the beginning, because students then will tend to grab onto the mouthpiece and like that, whereas I want them to learn how to stream the air through the instrument first. The other thing that I think is important is giving the best possible musical materials from the very beginning. So I've gone through literally a decades-long search of musical materials written by great composers that happen to be easy to play. That kind of music always turns out to be better than music that I might try to write with the intention of it being easy to play. So my method will have excerpts from many great composers. I'll mention a few of them later on. And then another important thing is taking care of your physical health while you play the clarinet, and in particular, the right thumb. Most of the clarinetists that I know, I would say a good majority of them, have had right thumb problems sometime during their careers. And I'm an example. I've had tendonitis in my right wrist. I've had tendonitis in this knuckle of my thumb. And I've used a neck strap for many years now. And I've even graduated to a shoulder harness recently because sometimes I didn't support the clarinet well with my neck. I'd find my neck being pulled forward. So my approach to starting the clarinet is to keep the body healthy while giving a sequence of events and having excellent music for the students to play at every stage of the game. So I'm now going to share, let's see, I'll put down my clarinet and share my screen with you. I'll be going back and forth between sharing and not sharing. Hold on. This must be what I want to share. Let's try that. There we go. And this is an example from the very beginning of the clarinet. And now I'll switch back to not sharing the screen because I now want to show you my approach to holding the clarinet. I saw a video very recently, actually, sort of by accident, where a gentleman was showing beginners how to hold a clarinet. And he gave a lot of good information. Here's what he said. He said, you start by taking your right thumb and putting it under the thumb rest, diagonally, not from the side. Then you find the rings of the right hand and place your fingers 1, 2, 3 down on the rings. And that's how you hold the right hand of the clarinet. He said, keep the fingers curved and don't straighten them out when you lift them up. Then he said, find the thumb hole from the back of the clarinet, right at the bottom of the register key, and push that down. And then place your fingers down of the left hand down. Only the first two have rings, and the third one doesn't have a ring. And keep your fingers curved at all times. Meanwhile, all of this time, he was resting the clarinet on his knee. That's all good information, but I prefer to introduce the clarinet this way. Take the clarinet and put your index finger under the thumb rest. This might not be as easy with an adjustable thumb rest as it is with my old-fashioned thumb rest here. In fact, I had to get one of my old clarinets out to make sure I had the appropriate thumb rest for this. But the point is that balancing a clarinet on the right thumb is very stressful to the thumb. It is not stressful to balance it on the index finger because our muscles are strong for grasping things but weak for opening the hand. And when you're pushing the clarinet up with the thumb, that's the opening muscle, not the closing muscle. The thumb is very strong this way, very weak this way. So I prefer starting with balancing the clarinet on the right index finger and closing down on the thumb if you can. If there's an adjustable thumb rest, that might not be possible. And then what he didn't mention is that a great part of balancing and holding the clarinet is the mouth. So I now have the clarinet in my mouth. I'm balancing it and holding it with my right thumb, and I am going to play a note. The first note I'd like to play is going to be E in the left hand. How do we find that note? I tell the student, put the clarinet in your mouth. We will have practiced, then they'll be practicing some blowing right as we do this. And I think the first note, the easiest first note to play is E, not open G, because open G requires more balancing from the right hand. So if you find the thumb hole and then feel the G sharp key under your finger. You're not looking at the clarinet, you're just feeling it. Touch the G sharp key and then find the ring. So you're touching the G sharp key, but you're not pushing it open. You can even try pushing it up and down a few times, touch it, but don't let it open. And then curve the finger over onto the first ring. And you will see that puts your index finger in that nice position of angling down toward the ring rather than coming in from the side. And then we find after that we can add fingers on the next ring and on the C. And now I'll take you to the page. I'll share my screen with you and show you what the beginning of the method looks like. I'm going to have to do this each time, okay? So the first tune that we actually learn by rote. And here it is in front of you. We've got the left hand positioned well, and we're going to play. And you'll hear the whole theme in a minute. You notice that I've written it in 2/2 time rather than 4/4 meter. And I did that for a reason. I think that there's an advantage to starting the student with whole notes and half notes rather than with quarter notes. And here's the reason. I'll put my cursor here. You can actually line up a measure of music with an inch. And you can teach the student that a whole measure is worth a whole inch, like here. And it's divided into two halves, two half notes, each of which is worth a half inch. So down here, you have a whole inch and you have 2 half inches. Then we go to the next page and you'll see here the same ruler, and you have a whole note, 2 half notes, and 4 quarter notes, each one of which takes an inch worth of music. Then we name the notes on the next page, G, F, E, D, C, and here's the melody that you just heard. There are actually 4 versions of it. 1, 2, actually the 3rd and the 4th are down here. This is I have a few misprints to take care of later on. And what I've done is made a possibility for the student to play duets with the teacher or with an audio that I will include in my online presentation. So here's the first little duet, one line being played by the audio and the other being played live by me. we can immediately start teaching the students how music is manipulated by composers. One of the things that composers like to do is to do mirror images of melodies. So here we have mirrors 1 and 2. This is the same melody going upside down.
One, two, one.
And all the time we're balancing the clarinet on the index finger. We don't have to worry about the stress on the thumb. We'll learn the right hand later, but for the moment, this is where we are. Next, I'd like to play you the happy song because we're very soon going to get into ear training, which is recognizing the difference between a half step and a whole step. And it takes a little bit of doing, I find. So first we'll play the happy song. I've recorded the bottom line and I'll play live the top line for you. Jenny and Jessica, can they see me in a small picture while I'm sharing the screen?
Yes, they can see you.
They can see me, so maybe I can just stay in that small picture and I don't have to go back and forth. So that'll be handy because I can save some time that way. Okay, so let's do the happy song. The bottom line is recorded. This will be played either by me on audio or by a teacher if there's a live teacher because the student hasn't learned how to play the right hand yet. But this is the same 5 notes in the left hand, G going down to C.
One, two, one.
And you'll also notice that I've kept the phrases quite short at the beginning so that they don't have to worry about running out of air. My recommendation about breathing, and this is not a talk about breathing, is for the beginning, just let the kids breathe as they choose to breathe. Just tell them inhale and blow. You'll find that many students blow correctly without getting any instruction from us. Only if they start, hunching their shoulders or sucking in their tummy should you then bring in some suggestions about breathing. But for the most part, just tell them to inhale and blow. I'm not talking about embouchure today. That's another topic, an important one, but not for today. That was the happy song. Now we have the sad song. The sad song is accompanied by one voice of the piano. And there are quite a few of my pieces of music in this method which are accompanied by piano. Most of the piano accompaniments are very, very easy. A few of them get a little bit complicated. There's one later on that I had to ask my wife to play because I'm not as good a pianist as she is. But this one I could play. It's one hand in the bass clef. And at some point or other, you will have to explain to the students that piano is in concert pitch and the clarinet is a B-flat clarinet so that the pitch of the clarinet is one step higher. They don't need to learn that yet, but that will come at some point. Now here's the sad song. Notice the rhythm is the same as the happy song, but it's actually in C minor piano, D minor clarinet rather than C major. So now here is the sad song.
One, two, one.
They have not learned how to tongue yet. I occasionally start a note with my tongue because I'm so used to doing it. But they can get a good sound just by forming a good embouchure and blowing into the instrument, establishing the air column before getting the tongue involved. The simplest music that I was able to find was in a wonderful book of lullabies from around the world. This one happens to be from North America, and you can see if you look at the first line here and going down here, it's only 3 notes. It's F, G, and finally E. I've written an accompaniment for it where the teacher can play the lower voice, the student not having learned the right hand yet, and a little bit of a piano accompaniment, or there's another version where the piano plays the teacher voice. The online component of the Clarinet Adventures will have various possibilities for the students so that they, if they don't have an accompaniment or another clarinetist in the room with them, they can play by themselves and the tempo will be adjustable to their needs. So here is Sleep, O My Beloved Son, a lovely but very, very simple North American lullaby. Still balancing the clarinet on the index finger of the right hand.
1, 2, 1.
So this use of accompaniment gets the students listening to the vertical aspect of music rather than just the horizontal aspect. And I'm going to show you in a minute why I think the piano is such a great instrument on which to teach. Now this may be the first surprise for you. Remember, we're not going into the right hand yet. I like teaching throat A in the left hand before going into the right hand, and there's a good reason for it, which I'll explain in a minute. When you introduce throat A, it's very important almost immediately to approach it from E rather than approaching it from G. Because if you approach it from G, the student can just put the finger down anywhere on the A key and not have a relationship with the first ring. So the note that they're most used to is E. And then they are going to, I'll go to this line. They're going to practice going from E to A, from G to A, but the important moment is when you go from G back to A to stay low on the A key and keep the index finger angled down. It's much easier to learn this while you're balancing the clarinet on your right index finger than it is while you're balancing it on your thumb. Much easier. And once you have that A, that gives you a lot of possibilities for playing in the left hand low register. Here's my next lullaby, and this one includes the note A. We're not approaching it from an E here in whatever that bar is. It looks like it's the 5th bar. We're not approaching it from E, but every time, this is one case where it's really good to have a teacher. Anytime the student gets too high on the A key, you encourage them to come back down. And if they're playing the Latvian Lullaby and they get too high on the A key, just have them play the playground song from the previous page. Have them play the playground song a number of times every day until it becomes ingrained that the E approaches the A directly rather than jumping. Okay, now we're looking for Latvian Lullaby. And this one also is a piano accompaniment, which I've recorded in advance. It's in D minor clarinet, C minor piano, and I think it's quite pretty.
1, 2, 1.
So now already the students have the sound of major and the sound of minor in their ear. To make that even clearer, we will add F sharp and E flat, also in the left hand. F sharp, is rather easy. Here's the Dies Irae. I don't need to play it now, but as soon as we introduce something, we try to give them something from our musical canon that they can relate to. And then they'll learn more about the Dies Irae later on when they get into hearing Symphonie Fantastique and Rachmaninoff Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini and other works like that. Now this is also different from the way most people teach. Because I like to stay in the left hand and like to keep the instrument supported by the right index finger for a long time, I teach fork E flat in the left hand before I teach the side E flat. Yes, we will use the side E flat much more often than we use the fork E flat, but the fork E flat allows us to stay in the left hand. And the fork E flat is easier for smaller fingers. I'm thinking that the person starting this will be 10 years old or 9 years old, something like that, probably not 6 or 7 years old. So the fingers are big enough to cover the holes of the clarinet, but smaller than my fingers. I'm thinking of Pete Hadcock, my old friend who played E-flat clarinet in the Boston Symphony for many years, and he had the forked E-flat just removed from his E-flat clarinet because his fingers were quite broad and he kept hitting it by accident and never used it. But I'm going to use it to teach the difference between C major and C minor in a moment. And here's where I go to the piano. The piano gives you a wonderful visual representation of major and minor because the white keys and the black keys literally show it to you. There's a little picture of the clarinet here, of the piano here, showing C, D, E, F, G, A. I'm going to play them for you on the piano. And it's easy to see that going from C to D is a whole step, going from D to E is a whole step, and going from E to F is a half step because there's no black note in between the E and the F. So we have. Now, I remember long ago someone telling me that that's the major sound, and then the minor sound is starting with white notes on D. So they did this. And I felt quizzical because I didn't hear the difference. And I find that many people don't hear the difference between C major and D minor. But if you introduce C major versus C minor, then you really do hear the difference. And on the piano, it's easy to see. We take the E natural and move it down a half step. So we have whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. And in D, the white notes get you D minor, and we raise the F a half step. And by doing that on the clarinet, we can hear the difference between major and minor much more readily. And there you can really hear the difference. I can now hear the difference between the E natural and the E flat, the whole step and the half step. Same thing in D. And you notice that I'm still stressing, holding the clarinet with the index finger. The left hand index finger is curling down over the G sharp side key, over the A key, and onto the ring, and closing the holes like that. And lifting the fingers, as the gentleman I quoted, he said a lot of good things. I just do things in a different order from the way he did, lifting and lowering the fingers to seal the holes. I like using the word seal. Seal the holes with your fingers. And now I'm going to introduce A flat. They've touched the key, and now they get to push it. And with the addition of A flat, we now have the possibility of showing 3 modes on the same note. Here we have the major mode, here we have the minor mode, and then here we have the Lydian mode. Why is the Lydian mode important? I think it's underrated. I think we need to teach our students Lydian mode very early on, because in the 20th century, the Lydian mode has become very popular, especially in movie music. I have here a couple of YouTube samples for you which show you how the Lydian mode can be used in modern music. It's taking a little while for this to load. There we go. Here's my first example of Lydian mode. And there you have in the Jetsons, Lydian mode. F sharp rather than F natural. My favorite example of Lydian mode, I won't tell you what it is because you'll recognize it. I have to get rid of an ad at the beginning of this one. It's taking a little moment to load. It's asking me to rate my experience on YouTube. That's never happened before. How can I get rid of that? I'll tell them that my ad experience was excellent. Here we go. Now you just heard the beginning of a 3-minute excerpt, and you heard la da 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 dum bum. It wasn't exactly Lydian mode because there was a chromatic in there, but it did start on tonic and went to the raised 4th scale step and then up to the 5th scale step. And when we get toward the climax of this excerpt, then you'll hear something which is familiar and which I love. I'm sure that almost all of you recognize that theme. That's the theme from E.T. Extraterrestrial, written by the greatest film composer ever, John Williams. And film composers use Lydian Mode a lot, not just John Williams, but all of the others. And so I think it's very valuable to learn these three modes rather than just major and minor, and to hear them in your ear. So the first example that I have here, I'll play for you. C major. Minor. And Lydian. And how would you characterize these modes? Remember that mode means mood. So it's very easy for us to say major is happy, minor is sad, and that's true, but there can be a number of other moods that they depict, more subtle than that. What about Lydian? I've often thought of it as being a questioning mode, that the F sharp sort of asks a question, like you raise your voice when asking a question. But when I was doing my Lydian research to find the Jetsons and E.T., I came across someone who called it the optimistic mode. So that's another way of looking at it. And here we have in the left hand of the clarinet the ability to play major and minor in C and D, and to play major, minor, and Lydian all on C. Now we're ready to go to the right hand. The way my method is set up, it's possible to go to the right hand before doing all of the chromatics in the left hand. Years ago, I taught a 5th grade class in Ann Arbor when I was there at the University of Michigan, and the students got anxious, not anxious, eager. They had the rest of the clarinet and they wanted to use it. So I had to basically sort of skip some of this chromatic stuff, some of this ear training stuff, and let them play the right hand first. But I think if you can hold them off and keep in the left hand until they've learned E flat, F sharp, and A flat to go along with the diatonic C, D, E, F, A, it really is a great advantage. And the longer you can have them hold the clarinet with the index finger of the right hand rather than balancing on the thumb, the healthier it will be for your right hand eventually. Now we do get to the right hand, and here we have the musical staircase. I hope you all can see my hands. Here's the left hand. It's hard for me. I'll hold my pinky down like this. We have open G, then thumb comes down for F, E, D, C. The open note and 4 usable notes as we go down. As we go down, it's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Right hand, we skip the thumb. We have these 4 fingers: index finger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky. As we go down, we have the open C, whole step to B flat, half step to A, whole step to G, whole step to F. It's the same intervallic pattern in both of the hands, just confused by the fact that the fingers are not the same because we're using the thumb in the left hand but not in the right hand. The left pinky does not engage in this discussion yet. It is a jack of all trades, but the right pinky playing low F is part of the basic hand position, and the scale that's most natural to the clarinet in the shallow register is F major, lifting the fingers up one by one and putting them down one by one. Now, how do we hold the clarinet with the right hand? Now we can play a C the way we have. We're balancing the instrument here. I'll stand up so you can see the right hand. And now I can actually hold the clarinet in my left hand while I slide the right thumb under the thumb rest. And now I follow the same instructions that the gentleman gave, which is you come in with the thumb angling from the rear, you angle the right hand from the rear, touch the side key just as you touch the G sharp key, curve the finger over the first ring, and then seal the rings with your fingers as you come down. There may be two difficulties for a small hand of a 9 or 10-year-old. One is being able to reach over the side key rather than to grab the clarinet under the side key. This is something that we need to avoid. No matter what, don't allow your student to hold the clarinet like this, grabbing onto the ring, because then getting up to the side key, which we use more frequently than the fourth key of the left hand, becomes difficult later on. Make sure that they curve the finger enough to reach the hole over the side key. If their finger is too small or too short to do that, you might have to take your pliers and do something to adjust the height of the side key without affecting the intonation much, to make sure that they can go from the ring to the side key and back, just the way we went from the ring in the left hand to the A key and back. And then from that point on, we lower the fingers down. The G hole is sometimes difficult because it's quite a bit larger than all of the others. Some student model clarinets make the G hole smaller, and that can be helpful for small hands. Depends on the size of the hand. It doesn't depend upon the age of the student. But most 9 or 10-year-olds are big enough that they can seal that bottom hole with their ring finger. And again, I use the word seal. You want to feel the finger on the ring, feel the finger on the ring, feel the roundness of the ring, feel the roundness of the ring, seal all those notes, and then finally pushing down the F key to reach low F. But we can start at first with the same music that we learned in the left hand. One of the points I make in my method is that notation is very flexible. You can write the same melody several different ways. I wrote the first melody in 2/2 time, then soon after that we teach 4/4 time, and now here I'm blending into teaching 2/4 time, 2/4 meter. So we have the same melody that was in 2/2 time, now in 2/4 time. We're learning new notes, so we've got the note names up above the notes, C, B flat A, B flat C. We're now holding the clarinet in the left hand, balancing it on the right thumb, and playing the first 3 notes of the lower register. Excuse me, I need to fix the mouthpiece. And you recognize that theme from the first thing I played today. I learned something I think very important from Charlie Neidig. Charlie, I think, is a genius. Charlie has a brain unlike any other I've met. He knows so much about music. He knows so much about the clarinet. I have been inspired by becoming very friendly with Charlie over the years. He was a member of the faculty of Clarinetopia that I organized for 3 years at Stony Brook University and for 3 years at Michigan State. And then we've kept up our friendship since then. He said something in one of his masterclass that I had never heard anyone else say. And that was, when you're using the right hand of the clarinet, you can use your left hand to hold the clarinet by using a little bit more pressure. Now that doesn't mean you're going to be grabbing on, because it's important to keep light. But you can start with the idea that as I play C, and go on down into the right hand, that I actually use the left hand now to support the right hand. All of this is trying to get pressure off of the right thumb so that we'll have long lifetimes as clarinetists without running into the problems I've run into with tendonitis in my fingers and my thumb, my wrist, etc. We teach the same music, 3 notes here, the mirror version, and then going down to the bottom of the clarinet. I don't need to play this now because you can see the music, and it's the same music that I started with, and you can play 4 different versions, 3 notes going C, B flat A, 3 notes going A, G, F, and doing it in the mirror form as well. And down here it says you can play them together as duets, trios, or quartets. Any version of the 4 works together harmonically. Then we're going to revisit the sad song. You remember the sad song, D minor. Ooh, now we're going to play the sad song in Clarinet G minor, utilizing the right hand. And remember the correspondence of the hands. When we did it in the left hand, it was F, E, D. Thumb, first finger, second finger. Here it's going to be index finger, middle finger, ring finger. And I'm helping to support the clarinet with my embouchure and with my right hand as I finger the notes of the left hand. In this case, I've recorded a student version. This doesn't require a teacher because the student has already learned all of these notes. So the student can play the lower line with this clarinet supported by the index finger. It's just left hand, and then can play the upper line with the right hand in its normal position. Now I have to get away from YouTube, from the Lydian Mode on YouTube, and go back to my playlist here. And next we have the sad song revisited. Right hand instead of left hand, same music, but a new accompaniment that I've recorded in advance.
1, 2, 3.
Here's Oh My Beloved Song, Oh My Beloved Son, also in a new key. I do want to play this for you, even though you've heard it in the left-hand key, because at this moment, the clarinet playing a concert B flat and the piano playing this is a clarinet line, and the other clarinet playing a D flat creates a dissonance. This is the first time they will have heard a half step played simultaneously. And then I explain that in a minute. So let's first hear Sleep, O My Beloved Son in the new key.
One, two, one.
And the analogy that I like to use for dissonance is that dissonance is the spice of music. Some people like their food hot and spicy, and some people like a lot of dissonance in their music. Some people prefer their food to be milder and like less dissonance. But without any spice at all, food gets pretty boring, and without any dissonance at all, music can get pretty boring too. So we want to seek dissonance, and we haven't talked about the word consonance, but consonance being the opposite of dissonance, when the notes blend together rather than conflicting with each other. My next demonstration will be called Fun with Cannons, and this is written by the great composer Michael Webster. I don't consider myself to be in the same category as Brahms, but you'll get to Brahms very soon, and his music is far more beautiful than mine. But these two canons demonstrate that, first of all, we learn what a canon is. This is their first experience in counterpoint, listening to two voices doing different things at the same time. And these canons are canons at a fifth, where the lower voice starts on C and the upper voice starts a fifth higher on G, and therefore they demonstrate the correspondence of the hands, left hand and right hand. You can play the upper voice, still balancing the clarinet on your index finger and using the four available fingers of the left hand in addition to the open G, and on the lower voice you can finger it in the fingers of the right hand. Now I've recorded the lower voice of the first one, which is called waltzing. It's not quite fast enough to be a waltz, but it's in 3/4 time, so we'll call it a waltz, and that one is here. Yeah, I'm sorry if it's a little bit out of tune. I have a little trouble hearing the audio when I play, so excuse me if it's not impeccable intonation. But you get the idea of how this canon ends up being played in sixths, and is a nice demonstration of how the right hand and the left hand can work independently and make some beautiful music. The next one is called Marching. It's also a canon at the fifth. In this one, I'm going to play the lower voice, and I've recorded the upper voice. The upper voice still can be played with the left hand alone, balancing the clarinet on the index finger. And the lower voice is just, with one exception, there's a D here, but with one exception, it's all notes in the right hand alone. So we're using the left hand to help support the clarinet a little bit when we're playing the lower voice.
One, two, three, four.
I might have been a little too generous with my breath marks here. You notice the phrases are getting gradually longer, and they've now learned to take a breath and get to the next downbeat on time. And this is probably too many breaths, so maybe I'll take out that one and this one. So, but at any rate, at the end of each of those half notes, it's possible to breathe, and the student can breathe or not. And there you have the waltzing canon and the marching canon. I actually asked them to play the canons first and then asked them to figure out what a canon is. It's interesting to pose a question and then to see whether they come up with an answer. How can you imagine what these two voices have in common as you look at waltzing? And some of them may get the answer and some of them may not, but let them cogitate about that for a minute before telling them exactly what a canon is. Now we're ready to put the hands together. And now we have the realm of the great composers. Here we have an excerpt from Mother Goose that I've arranged for clarinet in the low register with piano accompaniment. None of these notes are new, but this is the first time that I'm blending the two hands, notes in the right hand, notes in the left hand. Ravel happens to be the first composer that we come into contact with. The others that are contained in the very first volume of this method, I can think of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, Chopin, Brahms, Tchaikovsky, Mussorgsky, I've got two excerpts from pictures at an exhibition. For example, when we learn low E, we play Bidlow, the tuba solo from pictures. And when we learn mixed meter, we play one of the promenades with the clarinet and the low register. And then you're going to hear some Ravel now, and there also is a significant amount of Stravinsky in the method as well. So now let's listen to Mother Goose, which combines the two hands together. There I can see all of the clarinet line if it's at that height. Mother Goose is here.
One, two, three, four.
And there you have just a hint of Lydian with that F sharp. I might have mentioned that Lydian mode was not common in the 18th and 19th centuries, although Beethoven wrote one movement of his string quartet opus 132, the middle movement, the biggest, longest movement of that wonderful quartet, totally in the Lydian mode. But then the Lydian mode started making an appearance toward the beginning of the 20th century quite a bit. I just did La Mer not long ago with my youth orchestra, and there you have this melody that goes, which is definitely Lydian and blends well with a whole tone scale. We'll learn a whole tone scale at some point, not so distant future in the method, and that's another form of ear training, to hear a scale of all whole tones. The Lydian mode has 3 whole tones to begin with, rather than a combination of whole and half. We haven't learned B natural yet. So there you have it. It's like F sharp in the left hand. So we can get from G to E going via F natural, or going via F sharp. Same thing with C, B flat, or B natural in the low register. And now they're really starting to hear the difference between a whole step and a half step, and that's crucial for good ear training. There's the sad song returning. I won't play that for you now because I think we're sad enough. Here are some melodies with B natural. I forgot to include Humperdinck in my list of composers, but there he is with a theme from Hansel and Gretel, his major claim to fame. It's a wonderful opera. He was a student of Wagner's. And here we have our first examples from Brahms, 2 of his songs, one called War es dir and the other Anklänge. Simple melodies. Note that they're just low register B natural. And I might say for today's talk, I'm not doing very many, if any, finger exercises. I'm just doing melodies. That doesn't mean we do only melodies. Each of these melodies is prepared for by finger exercises, such as 2 fingers at a time. And for this Brahms Opus 33, we would need to have practiced B natural to D, which is a little harder because you have to coordinate 2 hands together. But that's in there. I just didn't think it was necessary to show that to you today. And now here is what might possibly be your young student's first recital piece. I've arranged Brahms Intermezzo Opus 117 number 1 for clarinet low register, and piano. And I needed to ask my wife to play the piano part because she's a better pianist than I am. She actually accompanied Ron Paul's flute master classes 40 or 50 years ago while she was a flute member of the class and also an excellent pianist. My piano skills are limited, shall we say. And as we go through, you will see that the piano part is a little more complicated than any that I've done. You would need to have a decent pianist to play this. But it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. It's one that I've loved after hearing my father play it when I was a kid. And now I'm going to play it for you. And for this demonstration, I'll stand up so you can see both of my hands. You might not be able to see my embouchure, but we're talking about hands. So this is the Intermezzo Opus 117 by Brahms. This will be the longest piece that you'll have heard by far. And also, I've put a couple of breath marks in there. These breath marks are convenient. It's not convenient to breathe between two quick notes, but it's always convenient to breathe after a long note. So the piano part is recorded, and I will stand up and play the clarinet part for you.
One, two.
On the last note, you may have heard a little unintentional vibrato. I get kind of emotional when I play that piece because it makes me think of my dad. It's a beautiful piece, and Brahms and Tchaikovsky especially wrote any number of simple tunes in a slurred style that works so well for beginning clarinet. This piece is very easy to play and very, very beautiful when you hear it in its context with the piano accompaniment. This is another demonstration of how the hands correspond. We've talked about this before, but just remember as you go down in the left hand, major, Lydian, minor, and in the right hand, major, Lydian, minor. And I already talked about how you can get from E to G via F and back via F sharp, same thing in the right hand. And I didn't talk about A flat in the right hand, but we've learned it by now. And the same thing is true. Notice that when you play in the left hand, the fourth finger of the left hand open down to 4, the fifth note, the closed note, we go up and then push down the next key. The right hand is doing the identical thing. Pinky up to the next key. So acoustically, the exact same thing is happening here as here. And I think that is eye-opening. So we can play I'm going to skip that page to make sure we don't run out of time. Here we have major, minor, and Lydian in the low register. I've demonstrated it, I say low register, in the right hand. I've demonstrated it in the left hand, and this is the same thing. These are melodies first in major, then in minor, and then in Lydian. And by playing them one after the other, you hear the difference between the scales. Guess what? We're going to go to the upper register. Here's another example of where the correspondence of the hands is fascinating. The left hand open in the low register. The right hand open in the low register is C. So the four-finger note in the left hand is the open note in the right hand. So all we have to do is to push the register key down, and we end up with a melody that corresponds with the left hand in the low register, a twelfth above the right hand in the low register, and an octave above the left hand. So here you have the typical slurring up of the twelfths. I find that the upward twelfths are rather easy for a student if they've got a strong enough reed and a well-developed embouchure by playing in the low register for I don't know how many weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, or however long it takes. And these are fairly easy. And then we can show you that is all in the left hand. Utilizes the right hand. And then the second example is so we learned that the upper register right hand is an octave above the lower register left hand and a twelfth above the right hand. Then I think I'm doing well on schedule. I think I'm going to skip limping right now and go directly to strolling. Limping introduces 5/4 meter, which is not so hard. You just beat 5 beats in a bar and connecting the registers that way. But now the final example that I have, and then I'll be very happy to take your questions or hear your comments. Practicing the twelfths. This is a little piece that I harmonized and call strolling. I'm going to stand up so that you can see the fingers of both hands, and I've written a piano accompaniment to it. And this is a nice way to approach the upper register using the simple notes of G, F, E, D, C in the upper register. And I'll stand up for this one. Wait, oh, it's in the middle. There we go. It insists on starting in the middle. There we go. Now it will start at the beginning.
One, two, three, four.
And we end in concert B flat major, which is a great key for the clarinet. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because that's all of the display that I have. And then I'll be interested in hearing whether anybody has a question or a comment. Hello, Jenny. Hello, Jessica.
Hi. Thank you so much. We've had several people asking on Facebook when they will be able to purchase this book because they're very interested in knowing that.
I don't know the answer to that. It will be a little while yet. And it's a complete method. It actually has advanced etudes taken from Chopin and whatever, which I'm not getting into yet. The first segment will take us from low E up to high C. So we'll do first partial and third partial. And I'm working to finish that. When it will happen, maybe by the end of 2021, I hope. I'm working hard at it. Sung-Yi Lee is actually helping me a little bit because she is much more knowledgeable about online presentation and putting things in book form. I think she's here today listening. And I do intend to establish a YouTube channel for myself to put these out available in discussion format like this, to be followed up with a book.
Great. Yeah, we will definitely be sure to share this information with you all, and I'm sure somebody will review it in the Clarinet magazine, as is customary with all these new releases that come out. Another question that was asked is, when will we see a compilation of all of your teaching articles from the Clarinet magazine?
At the moment, the best way to get those articles is to go to clarinet.org and find the James Gillespie, what is it called? The Archival Library?
The library, yeah.
Yeah, James Gillespie Archival Library, and they're all there. You can click on all the back issues and find my articles. That's the easiest way to do it. And
I think we'll probably just compile them into a set and have that as a resource. The pedagogy committee is working on organizing many of the articles so that they're searchable, and I know that's something coming to the new website, so we're looking forward to having that as a feature. So we'll definitely take that into account since there's so much incredible information that you've shared with the clarinet community over the years. So I'm going to push for that.
Good. Well, I think that's great. But for the time being, you can find anything you want to find written by me in whatever, I've written 82 articles now. The most recent was December 2020, and I've already got the one ready to go on the next issue. I did transposition on this most recent article. I think that's an important skill that has sort of gone by the wayside, and we'll continue. Great.
Any other questions? I'm seeing Sunny is actually watching on Facebook. I see her commenting here.
Hi, Sunny.
Jenny had to step away and get a coffee, I think, because we were just commenting on how your voice is so soothing. It reminds us of watching Bob Ross.
Oh, that's great. I've been studying yoga more seriously than ever before this year. It started at the beginning of the pandemic, and I started doing online yoga classes. Oh, do I have 2 more minutes?
Of course.
Okay. I wanted to promise people to some exercises for helping the hands and the wrists. And my yoga teacher has actually given me some of them. The first one, we have to strengthen these muscles in here with the thumb and here. So I'm going to just show you one hand. I'll stand up. Pull the thumb pad and the pinky finger pad together, and you can even put your fingers together like that. And then rotate your wrist like this. Pulling those pads together helps strengthen them. This is not like lifting weights, but it strengthens them over time. And it also helps open up the carpal tunnel. It helps improve your neurological system that goes from your brain into your hands. Similarly, what did I want to do next? Similarly, if you take a weight, I have here a Trader Joe's sparkling lime and an Ozarka natural spring water. I recommend the Trader Joe's sparkling lime because it's got a nice neck to it. It's hard to grab a hold of the Ozarka. So if you don't have a 1 pound weight or a short weight, you can do this exercise. It's so simple and so easy. Just do it a little bit every day. Don't ever do an exercise that actually hurts. You don't want it to hurt. I'm doing it with my right hand, but you can do it with both hands. And then you also want to strengthen the fingers. One thing that we rarely do is to use the muscles that pull the fingers apart. So you can put your hands in prayer position and just pull out like this. No strain, no stress, no pain. And then you can also do this. Don't try to pull the fingers out too far, just a little bit. No pain, just easy. And then for the forearms, if you keep your prayer position and push a little bit to one side, you'll start to feel a bit of warmth underneath your arm. It's sort of wakening up the neurological system there. Just a gentle push and hold it for a few seconds. Don't go all the way over to the side, just a little bit, just to where you feel that warmth, and then that's enough. And then you do it to the other side. And then similarly, because I'm on this side of the camera, you can take either arm and stretch it out. I'm pushing I'm keeping my shoulder forward. I don't want the shoulder to be back, shoulder forward. And I'm telling somebody to stay away from me, stay away. Or I'm trying to reach a button that's out of my reach. And as I push out, I can feel activity in the arm. Again, you don't want to pull your hand back to the point where it hurts, just up a little bit. And then if you look to the right, you'll feel an increase in activity there. So those are a few little exercises. Whoops, I lost my, hello?
We lost you on the camera.
Well, that's weird. Maybe this is time to say goodbye.
You said go away, so the camera the camera cut out on you. Well, that's okay. We are out of time anyway, but I wish I could see you to say bye, but
yeah, that is strange, and I don't know how to fix it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this awesome presentation. As I mentioned, we'll be sharing with the ICA community as soon as we know when Michael's books are going to be released, so that you can have access to those. If you missed part of this presentation, don't worry. It's going to be up on YouTube in just a little bit. And we are going to get ready for our masterclass with amateur clarinetists at 5:30 with Jose from Baeste. So please come back for that. And we will see you again soon. Thank you so much. Thank you,
And
Michael.
let me say goodbye to everyone, and I'm glad this didn't happen 10 minutes earlier.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I think we talked over each other.
Yeah, you can always reach me at mwebster@rice.edu if you have any questions or comments. That's my only email address, and I'm happy to converse with you. mwebster@rice.edu. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I also wanted to mention, if you haven't seen on social media, we have a website launch party coming up soon, and we're going to be giving away lots of prizes. So in order to register for those prizes, to be eligible, just complete the form that I sent in the Google Doc. If you're watching this on Facebook, it's on the Facebook page. It's on the Instagram stories, is where we announce it. But if you go to the Instagram bio, the link is in the profile. And if you have any questions, you could email us. But please complete that form so you can win some awesome prizes soon.
Yeah, and we'll have that at the party at 7 o'clock as well, so you'll be able to sign up then. We won't exclude you if you show up. So we'll see you in just a few minutes for the masterclass, and thank you again. Bye-bye.